Have you ever wondered what would stand between you and completely changing your life? One choice, just one choice. Imagine yourself starving, dressed in tattered clothes, walking down streets where every penny means survival. In front of you, a fallen wallet, filled with enough money to solve all your immediate problems. No one would see it if you caught it. No one would know. But João was not just another kid. João was different. What separated him from thousands of other kids in his situation wasn't luck. It was character. In this true story that will make you cry and believe in human kindness, you will discover how a simple act of honesty can transform not only a life, but destroy entire social barriers. Get ready for a journey that will make you question your own principles, believe in modern miracles, and understand that true wealth is not in money. Warning: this is not just another story. This is a life lesson that will leave you speechless. Want to know what happened? Keep watching. But have tissues nearby. You'll need it. The city breathed misery that grey afternoon. João, with his skinny 12 years old and eyes that already knew the harshness of life, walked down a dirt street on the outskirts of São Paulo's poorest neighborhood. His worn, almost transparent sneakers barely covered his calloused feet of a boy who had grown up working since he was 8 years old. The cold July wind seemed to bring with it stories of despair. His mother, Dona Maria, was sick at home, battling tuberculosis that was consuming not only her lungs, but all her hopes. She'd gone out to earn a few dollars, doing odd jobs, carrying groceries to the market, cleaning sidewalks, anything that might allow her to earn a few dollars to buy medicine for her. It was then that a glow on the ground caught his attention. It was unusual to see anything bright in those forgotten streets. João approached cautiously, like a cornered animal, and realized it was an Italian leather wallet, clearly expensive. His trembling fingers took it, feeling the weight not only of the object, but of the decision he would have to make. Inside, a real treasure. Bills of 100 reais, 200 reais, credit cards, documents of a businessman. Calculating quickly, João realized that this money represented more than he had saved in years. It represented a real possibility of completely changing his miserable life. He could buy his mother's medicine, pay her back rent, buy decent food, and maybe even get a new pair of shoes. The temptation was gigantic, almost palpable. His eyes lit up for a moment at the possibility of escaping the misery that had been suffocating him since birth. But something inside his heart prevented him from succumbing to that temptation. It wasn't fear of being caught. It was something deeper, a sense of dignity that his mother had planted in him even in the most difficult of times. "Son, we may be poor, but we can't be dishonest," she always said. Juan closed his eyes. The wind seemed to whisper dilemmas in his ear. Every note inside that wallet represented a choice. Every penny screamed with the promise of immediate relief. But his conscience screamed even louder. The decision was made. It would not be today when misery would turn him into someone he didn't want to be. It would not be today when he would lose his dignity for a few moments of comfort. Fate, at that very moment, was preparing a twist that would change his life forever. The Alphaville mansion was more than an address. It was a symbol of power and solitude. 52-year-old Carlos Mendes walked the empty corridors like a ghost in his own home. His footsteps echoed on the imported marble floors, reflecting a life built on brutal work and sacrifices no one would ever see. Born in a small town in the interior of Minas Gerais, Carlos knew misery before he knew success. The son of a truck driver and a laundress, he learned from an early age that the world does not give gifts. Everything must be conquered with sweat and relentless determination. His business empire began in the back of a small truck, transporting goods between cities. Every penny was calculated, every decision weighed like lead. By the age of 30, he was a millionaire. At 40, he was one of São Paulo's most respected businessmen. But the price of this journey had been too high. Loneliness consumed him like a silent cancer. 2 failed marriages, children who barely knew him, employees who feared him but never loved him. Carlos had built walls so high around him that even he couldn't see inside. That particular morning, something was missing. His wallet. Not for the value of the money, but for the important documents, for the memories he kept inside. An old photo of his father, a business card from his first partner, small fragments of a story he struggled not to forget. The loss left him uneasy. It was unusual for Carlos Mendez to lose something. He always controlled every detail, every inch of his corporate and personal life. That wallet represented more than objects. It represented a part of his history that he did not want to let go. Sitting in his office, overlooking the São Paulo skyline, Carlos looked out the window. The city he had helped build looked like a huge jigsaw puzzle of indifference. People passing by, running, not caring about each other. His faith in humanity had long since been lost. To him, people were just numbers, statistics, potential gains, or losses. Love, compassion, kindness, words that sounded like foreign languages to his hard businessman's ears. At that moment, without knowing it, Carlos was about to discover that life always has a different plan than ours, and that sometimes hope emerges from the most unlikely places. Like the hands of a child he never knew existed. The photo was discreetly folded in the inner compartment of the wallet, almost like a secret kept for decades. When João unfolded it, his fingers trembled involuntarily. The man in the picture was no stranger. It was the face his mother kept in an old photo, hidden at the bottom of a drawer he was never supposed to see. His biological father, Miguel Santos, a truck driver who had mysteriously disappeared when João was only 3 years old. Dona Maria always avoided talking about him, her eyes filling with tears whenever his name was mentioned. All João knew were fragmented stories, whispers of a history that seemed more like a nightmare than a reality. The picture in the wallet showed a young Miguel next to a man who seemed to be his partner in a small transportation company. A tall, strong man in a suit, Carlos Mendez. The same person whose wallet João had found on the street. A shiver ran down his spine. Coincidence, or was something deeper about to reveal itself? Fragmented memories began to connect in his mind, conversations his mother would have on the phone when she thought he was sleeping, silent tears, words like betrayal, broken society, disappearance echoed in his memory. João knew that wallet was not just a lost object. It was a bridge to a mystery his family had carried for years. Every document, every paper inside that Italian leather could hold the key to understanding what really happened to his father. The decision to return the wallet was no longer just an act of honesty. It was the first step in uncovering a secret that could change her life completely. Fate, once again, had an ace up its sleeve. And João was about to discover that some stories are bigger than mere coincidences. Carlos Mendez's office was a sanctuary of power and coolness. Glass walls, minimalist design furniture, every object strategically placed to convey absolute control. When João walked in, he looked like a fragile little bird invading a steel fortress. Carlos looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. His eyes, accustomed to negotiating millions, now looked at this skinny boy with leaky sneakers and a shirt 2 sizes too big for his body. He expected a request for a reward, perhaps a few thousand reais to make up for his good deed. "What do you want in return?" Carlos asked, already preparing his checkbook. Juan took a deep breath. I did not tremble. His eyes, though tired from a hard life, had an impressive clarity. It was not a plea for alms, but a plea for opportunity. "Signor, I just want the opportunity to study. My mother is sick, she needs treatment. If you could help me get into a good school, take a technical course, I promise I will dedicate myself completely." Silence. Carlos felt something he hadn't felt in decades, a tightness in his chest. It was no ordinary pity. It was something that reminded him of himself decades ago, when he also dreamed of opportunity. The tears did not flow immediately. First, there was a slight trembling of the lips, then a different gleam in the eyes. Carlos finally understood that this boy didn't want easy money. He wanted dignity. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice different, almost fatherly. João Santos." At that moment, a name Carlos knew very well resurfaced from his memories. Miguel Santos, your former partner, the man he had betrayed years before. The universe was preparing its most surprising move. Carlos's memory was like an old movie, full of blurred scenes and moments he struggled to keep hidden. Miguel Santos was not just a partner, he was the only man who really knew him completely, who knew all his corporate secrets. At the time, Carlos was an ambitious young businessman, willing to do anything to expand his transportation company. Miguel was different, a man of principle who believed in business ethics. When he discovered some of Carlos's illegal tax maneuvers, he did not hesitate to confront him. Their conversation that winter night in 1998 had been explosive. Miguel threatened to expose everything, to compromise not only the business, but Carlos's entire reputation. What few knew was that Carlos would not remain passive in the face of this threat. Using influential contacts, Carlos achieved something unthinkable. He made Miguel disappear. He did not murder him, but he made him disappear completely. Documents were forged, threats were made. Miguel's family was dispersed. His wife, Maria, was left alone with a young son. Now, decades later, João was there. Not as a coincidence, but as a living sentence of the past that Carlos tried so hard to bury. The boy's eyes held something familiar, the same glint of determination Carlos had seen in Miguel years before. It wasn't just a similar face. It was as if a part of Miguel had been reborn in that child. Carlos felt that the missing wallet was no accident. It was an invitation to settle old scores, to settle a debt they had been carrying for decades. The universe had prepared its cruelest and most precise revenge, to return to Carlos, the son of the man it had destroyed years before. The question running through his mind was simple. Did João know the whole truth, or was he simply an unwitting instrument of fate? The silence in the office was heavier than the most complex contract Carlos had ever signed. A new story was about to be written, and this time, without him being able to control every comma. Carlos's office had never witnessed such a surreal scene. A child who represented everything he had tried to erase from history now stood there before him with a dignity that spanned generations. João didn't know it, but his simple action of returning the wallet had triggered a transformation more profound than any financial transaction. Carlos watched the boy's every move, the erect posture, the clear eyes, the determination that dangerously reminded him of Miguel. "Do you know who my father was?" João asked, breaking the heavy silence in the office. Carlos felt an internal tremor. The truth was about to be revealed, but not in the way he imagined. It would not be a dramatic confession, but an act of reparation. "I'm going to do more than just help you study," Carlos said, his voice different, almost paternal. "I will completely change your family's destiny." The plan quickly began to be laid. A full scholarship for João at one of the best private schools in São Paulo. Full medical treatment for Dona Maria, who was struggling with tuberculosis. An apartment in a better neighborhood, away from the poverty that surrounded them. But Carlos wanted more than financial help. He wanted reconnection. He wanted to right the wrongs of decades ago. He discovered that Donna Maria worked as a day laborer and struggled alone to raise João after Miguel's disappearance. Every detail revealed was like a stab at his own conscience. Not only had she destroyed the partnership with Miguel, but she had destroyed an entire family. The transformation would not just be for João or his family. It would be the transformation of Carlos himself. The documents inside that wallet, which seemed to be just unimportant papers, turned out to be the key to unraveling a family mystery. Each paper, each photograph, each record told a story of betrayal, but also of possible redemption. João represented more than an honest boy. He was Carlos' chance to reconnect with his own humanity, with the values he had lost in the path of ambition. "Let's rebuild everything," Carlos said, discreetly touching João's shoulder. Everything that was lost. Fate had prepared their most unlikely and powerful reconciliation. And it all started with a simple wallet lost on the streets of São Paulo. On a silent afternoon, Carlos invited João to a special meeting, not in his corporate office, but in a neutral place. A small coffee shop in downtown São Paulo, far from prying eyes and corporate whispers. João arrived accompanied by Donna Maria, who was still struggling with her illness, but was already guaranteed medical treatment. Her eyes, once tired, shone with renewed hope. Carlos began to tell the real story, not a narrative of victimization, but a brutal confession about what really happened to Miguel Santos, João's biological father. He revealed how a corporate partnership had become a web of lies, how Miguel discovered irregularities in Carlos's business dealings and was silenced not by force, but by a complex web of influence. Documents were presented and evidence stored for decades finally came to light. João's mother wept silently, each word revealing scars from a past that seemed impossible to heal. João listened attentively, his maturity impressing Carlos by the minute. What was most surprising was not the secrets themselves, but how that revelation could transform three completely different lives. Miguel had not simply disappeared. He was forced to go into hiding to protect his own family from possible reprisals, a decision that cost him decades of his life, of his love, of his identity. Carlos offered more than redemption. He offered a chance to rebuild what had been destroyed, not only financially but emotionally. "I want you to forgive me," Carlos said, his voice breaking, not out of pity but because it's time to fix what was broken. Juan looked at his mother, then at Carlos. A silence that was worth 1,000 words. Fate was preparing its last and most surprising card. Carlos's transformation did not happen instantaneously, but like a river slowly changing its course. João was not just a child returning a wallet. He was the instrument of a moral reconstruction that Carlos considered impossible. In the following months, Carlos began to follow João's life closely, not as a distant benefactor, but as someone genuinely interested in your journey. He enrolled him in an elite school, guaranteed medical treatment for Donna Maria, and opened doors that seemed impossible for someone born in the periphery. But the real miracle was not in financial resources. He was rebuilding a lost dignity. João began to excel in his studies. His potential, once stifled by misery, now blossomed like a rare plant. Carlos looked at him with a mixture of pride and redemption. Each of the boy's achievements was like a balm for his own internal wounds. Donna Maria, recovering from tuberculosis, witnessed a transformation that went beyond the financial aspect. Her son was becoming someone who could change not only his own story, but also inspire others. In an emotional ceremony, Carlos decided to do something no one expected. Publicly, at a corporate event, he revealed João's story not as an act of charity, but as a testimony of integrity. "This boy taught me more about character than decades in the corporate world," Carlos declared, his voice breaking. João, dressed in a suit Carlos had purchased for the occasion, represented more than himself. He represented the possibility that honesty could be more powerful than any corporate strategy. The result would not be the traditional happy ending. It would be the beginning of a new journey. Carlos decided to create a foundation in the name of Miguel Santos, João's biological father, to help young people from disadvantaged communities gain access to education. Each scholarship would be a way to make amends for the mistake of the past. João, in turn, vowed to use this opportunity to transform the reality of other young people like himself. His dream now was to create social projects that would give voice and opportunity to those who were born without opportunities. The lost wallet had become much more than an object. It was the symbol of a transformation that demonstrated a simple principle. Integrity has a transformative power infinitely greater than any material wealth. Fate had prepared its most unlikely and powerful lesson for humanity. The afternoon light streamed softly in through the office window as Carlos signed the adoption papers. It was not a moment of bureaucratic formality, but a ritual of redemption. João watched, his eyes shining with a mixture of emotions that words could not convey. Donna Maria, seated discreetly in a corner, held an embroidered handkerchief, an heirloom from her own mother. Silent tears streamed down her face, not of sadness, but of a hope she had clung to for decades. Her son, that child who grew up in the arms of poverty, would now be heir to a legacy that went far beyond money. Carlos looked at João as if he were really seeing him for the first time. It was no longer just the boy who was returning his wallet. He was the son the universe had prepared to seek his own redemption. Each document signed was like the healing of old wounds, like pages of a book rewritten with the ink of compassion. Adoption represented more than a new last name. It represented the restoration of an interrupted history, of a destiny that had been violently diverted decades ago. Miguel, João's biological father, would finally be honored through that determined-looking child. "You are not just my adopted son," Carlos said, his voice trembling. "You are the chance I had to become human again." João hugged Carlos, not as a son looking for an inheritance, but as someone who understands that true wealth is not measured in money, but in integrity. Fate had prepared its most unlikely and powerful lesson for humanity. A story that began with a simple lost wallet ended up rewriting the meaning of family, forgiveness, and hope.